Okay, welcome. 60-minute flow, or let's say a fluid yin class tonight. So it's a very, very gentle flow. We'll hold some poses longer. And it's more here for you to dive into a layer deeper again. So less an exercise block, more somatics. Good. Okay, you guys can close your eyes. You can just start with intuitive movement, just to settle in. We'll eventually come lying on our back. So whenever you feel drawn to the mat, let that sort of happen. Let that gravity take over. Just a few breaths to take you into that starting pose. Very good. Bringing your awareness into the two hip halves. So last Friday we worked on womb awareness. And we'll stay in that area, but we'll go more into the superficial or more superficial space of your hips. So see if you can feel, if your buttocks is on the mat, if you can feel those two seat bones connecting to the earth. And from the hip bones out, the two pelvic halves out into the thigh bones, through the legs, down into the feet. Feeling the soil, feeling the earth. Good. And you can connect your feet to the floor, but you can let your knees fall in against each other if that feels nice for you. Or you can keep them in line with the hips and the feet. So, yogi's choice to find into that starting pose. Good. Coming into the lower half of the body with all your awareness, with the breath coming into the torso, but flowing deeper than your pelvic floor, flowing through the legs, like a connecting thread, like the red thread that brings it all together. And with the exhale from the feet, through the legs, through the hips, back out. Softening the muscles away from the bones, especially in your face. But see if there is residual tension also in that hip space, in that sacred hip space of yours. Very good. And then we can come into little pelvic tilts, and I'm sure you've done them with me before. If not, it's simply the drawing of your pubic bone towards your navel, which will press your lower back to the mat and flatten entirely, closing all the gap between mat and lower back. And with the inhale, we'll soften that again, and we'll let the pelvic floor expand downwards. Expand into all sides. And the pubic bone point away, and the tailbone kind of pushing into the mat, making the gap between your lower back and your mat even bigger. Exhale to draw the air back up and out, and flatten the lower back again. So it's just this little tilt of your pelvis. But see if you can do that without too much strain. So just letting it be, letting it happen. Good. Very good. Keep it going. And that container of that pelvic floor or that pelvis moving on its own, see if that can become an agent in its own right. So letting that be more explorative. From the hip halves down through the legs, there is this energy current, but this energy current is also there into your tailbone. So see if you can connect to that and let that explore. Maybe it draws not just these pelvic tilts, but more circles, lifting hips away from the floor or diving them even deeper into the earth. Good. So it's a very free movement of your hips. Maybe you come even into a bridge pose. Soft and explorative. Circles, or maybe even a figure 8 that you can draw with your hips. So like the eternity symbol, that lying figure 8. One half on the left, the other half on the right. Very good. Keep it going, floating your hips away from the mat if you don't yet. And see if you can come into a floating hip, which is grounded through the hip half to feet pathway. So it's a very grounding practice of bringing everything back to the earth, back into rhythm, back into the source. And stay up in a bridge pose without too much strain. So there's not the objective of bringing the hips to their highest point or expanding your front body to the max. It's just this floating feeling, but heavy through the legs. See if you can shift right hip down towards the right knee. So it's like a pivot of your hips in that floating bridge. All to connect into the mobility, the floatingness, but groundedness of your hips. Good. And then you can bring the hips down, the knees into the chest, and draw little circles with your knees to give your lower back a little massage. Very good. Changing sides. Good. And then you can lengthen the legs out and bring them over your head, hugging your thighs towards your chest. So it's like you can wrap your arms around the back side of your thighs. A snail pose. You can even let your hands trace the backside of your legs. You might have really stiff hamstrings, stiff calves from sitting all day or from running around all day. So see if you can give them a little massage if you want to. Good. Very nice. And then you can bend the knees and rock yourself with a few, so you can take your time here. You can rock yourself to a seat. Eventually landing there. Very good. It's in itself a massage of your back. Good. Cross-legged, you can bring the right leg back to point into what's in yin yoga called a deer pose. So this is where we land. Very good. There's no need to have the feet connected. They can be more apart if it feels good, but that's more intense. You can connect the left foot to the right thigh. Close your eyes and see if you can land here, arrive. Rather than focusing too much on pose, come back into those two pelvic halves that now, again, two seat bones that want to connect to the floor. So it might need a little bit of shift into your right body half. Very good. Bring the arms over the head. So you have this vertical line of downwards energy, even though your arms are up. And find a side body opening, dropping the left hand to the side, right arm reaches over the head, which gives you the opportunity to shift even more weight into the right seat bone. Good. So this left arm is not even here to collapse into, it's actually giving you more lift, more grounding at the same time. Dropping your shoulders away from the ears. With the exhale, we'll find a twist onto the other side. So the right hand comes behind you, left hand on the right knee to twist. Good. Landing here. So take your time to arrive here. It's not that you want to twist deeper, 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 but that your body actually has time to twist from the inside out. Heaviness in those hips that ground you to the source. And we'll switch back into this side opener, left hand to the side, right arm over the head. And we'll keep this dynamic now. So inhale, lengthen it out, and exhale, twist. Inhale, coming back into the side body opener. Maybe there's even more depth. Good. Exhale, twist. Inhale, last round. Left hand down. Exhale, right hand behind. Very good. And release. Unwind. Bring that right leg forward. And change sides. If there's any motion you need between the two sides, like windshield wiping your knees, you can do that. Otherwise, find back into the other side. Good. A moment of nesting, of falling into those two hip halves. And their lines out into the legs. So see if you can trace that with your inner awareness, with that embodiment of those legs, those hips up, the arms. Exhale, right hand comes down. And see if you can drop into it more. I know that there's lots going on in your life and it takes you time to arrive. It's the same for me. So we need that time to fall into place. To allow ourselves to stop the thinking process and start the being. Come into the twist, left hand behind, right arm, right hand on the knee and twist. Good. Again here, see if there's a downward motion, a sinking. If you just stay here and breathe, breathing the tantric breath of inhale down. How much your hara, this lower part of your belly, the hips, the pelvic halves, become heavier. And from here we move. Inhale up, exhale, right hand down, left arm over the head. Use it to push yourself into the floor. Exhale, twist. Right hand on the knee. Good. Inhale up and twist. Exhale, last round. Inhale up, side body. Good. Exhale, last twist. Very good. And from here you can untie that container, flowing out of it in however you manifest motion. Eventually we'll land in an all fours. Very good. Staying with that downward motion from hara, from hip halves down into feet. See if you can tuck both toes. Good. And let the knees just float from the mat for a few breaths. And see if that can, instead of letting you become weightless and floaty, be this super heavy connection of hips down into the knees. You can even shift the weight forth and back, shifting shoulders behind the elbows and back forth. One more breath. Good. And then you can land those knees again. Very good. Bring your forearms to the mat. Inhale to lift the knees away again. Same story. So we stay on the forearms and we'll just gently shift weight forth and back. Let it be heavy. So see if you can let the muscles do less and let the weight do more. Hips to heels. That line is what you're seeking. Very good. And last breath. Landing the hips. Landing the knees and then the hips, sorry. Sphinx pose. Very good. And see if you want to find a little seal pose maybe. Stay in Sphinx if that's enough for you. Otherwise you can see if you want to lift the elbows away from the floor. Again, the heaviness of heels to hips, hips to heels. See if there's some motion even coming from there. So a right-left shift of the hips. And see the connectedness of that integration. Moving the thigh bone back into your hip socket. Very good. And really sit down, come to the earth. Take a moment here to rest and arrive nesting, lying on your belly. Inhaling into the back body more now than into the front body. So because of the constriction, we need to use the back lobes of the lungs. The breath down into pelvic floor. And then you can release. Moving out and through this, we'll eventually land in a downward facing dog. Eventually, make your way there consciously. Good. Generous bend in the knees, but a lift through the side body. Unplugging upper arm bones from the shoulders almost. But bend the knees so you can really move. It's like a move of the thigh bones into the hip socket. Good. And then we'll shift hips over to the right side. It's like a pivot. It's almost like your heels want to come down on the right side. Good. Inhale, change sides. Left side. Exhale again to the right side. So it's like a shifting, pivoting of the heels in your downward dog. Very good. Keep it going. And let it morph out of this into something that feels right for you. So it doesn't have to stay in this shifting downward dog. See if there's something else. Good. Yes, exactly. Very good. Beautiful. And eventually we land the left knee to the floor. And pivot out the left knee, coming into a side plank on the knee. Right arm can come over the head. Good. Inhale. Let the hips be heavy. It's very pivot around, but we'll lift the upper body up, come into gate pose. Right hand along the right leg. Left arm over the head. Very good. Side body. And here, see if the left side of the hip can be your grounding anchor. So hip down to knee, knee into the left foot. Exhale, come back into side plank. Right arm over the head. Let the right leg float. Good. Bringing right leg forward, right hand to the right foot. See if maybe hand and big toe want to connect. And now you have this tangible connection of hand to of thigh, hip. So you can literally push the thigh bone back into into the hip socket. Very good. And release, come back into gate pose, right foot down, come up with the upper body, right hand alone. Good. And free that pose. So if there's some movements you need to do to connect more hip hops to legs, that's trailing, grounding pathway, do that. Exhale, come back out, find back into your downward dog. Hips come high. Very good. Let it be alive. Alive especially from hips downward, into heels, into toes. Good. Bending the knees. Right knee lands, left leg gets long. Side plank on the other side. Very good. Left leg is still connected to the floor. Let the right side of the hip get heavy. Connecting hip half with right thigh bone. Inhale to come up, gate pose. Left arm along the leg, right arm over the head. Good. Arriving in that pose. Again, these poses never have to be still. So if there is movement that's not fidgeting, but letting your pose be more alive, let that happen. Good. Exhale, come back out, landing right hand, letting the left leg float. And float from the hip out. So it's less a leg action and much more the hips being alive and in charge. Exhale, connect foot to hand, left foot. Maybe bend the knee for this to happen, that's perfectly fine. And see if you can literally move the thigh bone into the hip socket, pivoting your whole left side of the body backwards into the space behind you. Very good. Elongation, choose the elongation for your back side of the leg. Release, left hand leg lands. We'll just come up once more into gate pose. Left hand along the leg, right arm overhead. Good. And exhale, spill out. Let the hips lead to float, but connect them through the heels in whatever shape comes. Good. Very good. Eventually we'll meet in downward dog. If you're not there yet, eventually make your way there. Good. Walking our hands towards the feet this time. Good. Forward fold. Very nice. And see if you can explore the two hip halves and leg connections by shifting weight from one side to the other. So letting the right foot almost get weightless, shifting everything into the left leg, left hip half. And changing sides, right leg, right hip half. Good. Shifting forth and back until one of the feet almost gets weightless and starts to take off. So it's like a pendulum where your feet start to lift a few centimeters away from the floor, letting them hover. Very good. Hands connected to the floor or blocks. Very good. And then landing both feet a bit wider than hip width distance apart, so that you can bend the knees generously and walk your hands inside the feet for a very deep forward fold. Good. Maybe even wrapping your hands around the lower legs to grab or connect hands to the outside of the ankles. Good. Still keeping that pendulum maybe alive, shifting hips right to left. Very good. And release. Inhale, come into this halfway lift. Heel-toed feet back under the hip halves. So not together, but so that they're perfectly aligned for your body, where your hip halves need the support. You'll know that. Exhale, fold, and inhale, we'll just roll the spine up, like we're stacking everything on top of these hips. And see if you can keep the weight even this time. Coming into that weighted presence through hips, to legs, to feet. Like your entire weight is on those 2 feet. Very good. Tadasana, yogi stance. Good. And again, we'll shift the weight right to left, keeping both feet still connected, but just shifting weight. Good. Until we'll stay on the left side and bring the right foot up to connect for tree pose. Inside the thigh or inside the calf. Make sure the foot does not land on your knee. Good. Hands where they help you most, and most to balance, but also to help letting the hips be still the center point of this exploration. Good. Stay here for a few breaths. Very good. And then you can free yourself. Spill out from this. We'll eventually come into a low lunge, but you can move through whatever moves from here. Maybe you want to move through a vinyasa. Maybe it's just a forward fold and stepping back into right leg back, left leg forward. No rush to get there. So it is still the turny there. Yes, very good. Eventually we'll get into this low lunge here. Dava. Inhale to come up with the upper arms. Float away from the floor. Let the hips be heavy here. There's still the center point. Still the connection from hip outside, downward into the feet. And see if maybe your left foot wants to walk over more to the side, so you have more space, less constriction. Good. Arms over the head. Good. If you want, you can bring the hands behind the occiput, so where your lower head is in the back, and lean your head into those hands. Very good. And releasing, bringing both hands inside the front foot. And here we'll draw circles with the hips. We've done that before, so come back into that heaviness from the hara, from the hips. But they're steered or steering the place and the movement of legs and feet. So see where the movement comes from. Is it your legs initiating, or is it the hips and the legs just follow? There's no right or wrong, there's just the awareness of the pathway. Maybe coming back into the other side. Very good. And eventually letting the hips float back towards the right foot. Let the left leg get long into Ardha Hanuman. But we'll walk the hands further back until we come to sit inside the right foot, right shin. And you can move the lower leg here, the flesh of the lower leg aside. Good, for half Virasana. You can walk hands back from here, always nesting first. So bring those seat bones down, bring the heaviness into the hips, but the connection into the feet at the center point of whatever you do. And moving from there, maybe onto the hands, maybe onto lower arms, maybe all the way to the floor. Should your right knee float away on its own from the mat, just let that do what it does. You can bring a pillow underneath or a block if that feels nice. But what I want you to be with is less the tension now in your right thigh and much more how it connects into the hip. On what level you can feel that connection. Is it the bones that make contact at the hip socket? Or is it the muscles that grow from the spine down into your right knee, spinning a web of powerful connection through the body? Or is it maybe on a liquid level of the fascia? Or the skin layer wrapping hips to leg. Slowly unwind, come back out. If you're all the way down, first on the forearms, then onto the hands. Until we find back into our Ardha Hanuman, so just shifting hips up and then back into low lunge. Good. And from here you can spill out. You might want to move into bigger shapes to release whatever comes. Downward dog or goddess pose. Yes, or wide-legged forward fold is also my go-to, which feels nice in stillness, but even more so when it's alive and can move. Very good. Brava. Let your body take over. And then you can walk the hands back to the left foot. Very good. Step it back to the right, bringing your whole body to the floor and just nesting back in, letting it get super heavy. Just a few moments of what looks like nothing but is so much, is everything. If your dog lets you. And then awakening yourself again. You can come into Sphinx or seal pose and drink it in. staying here for a few more breaths until this track ends. Heavy hips, softening into the floor. Release, moving through what releases when you come out of a long hold. Yes. Eventually, downward dog. And walking hands to the feet.
Same action as before. Keep the hips pendulating and the feet heavy. Good. 1 foot heavy, 1 foot light. Until you feel ready to land them both and fold deeply, deeply in between. Maybe walking feet more apart, hugging in and around lower ankles. Good. Inhale, halfway lift, unwind. Exhale, fold. Inhale, roll it up. Into Tadasana, bring feet back under your pelvic half. So this is the challenge. Without looking, see if you can align yourself perfectly. Good. And then keep that hip motion, that shifting. 1 foot light, 1 foot heavy. Good. Usually we think our hips are wider than they actually are. So mostly often your feet are too wide to actually support you. See if you can feel where they need to be before we land in the second side of tree pose. So right foot down, left leg floats, bring it in. Thigh, lower thigh, or shin. Everything is alright. Good. And build the connection again. If you dare, close your eyes. Good. Yeah. Good. And unwind, flowing through what needs to flow. Good. So maybe forward fold, stepping left foot back, or downward dog. And until we yield left knee to the floor. Good. Inhale to rise, upper body up, but at the same time your hips become so much more connected through the legs. So it's the hips themselves that melt towards the floor, but the feet take that connection. Yes, arms can stay high or be at your heart, or again behind the lower head. You might want to walk your right foot more out. That gives you less constriction here in your hip flexor area and more space to sink. Good. It's almost like you can lean into that pillow.
spill from this into this lizard shape, which will connect to these hip circles. Very good. Again, the hips move on their own, but never actually on their own. So they always move with the legs. There's this saying in the yogic philosophy or the yogic teaching that where your feet goes, your knee goes, and where your knee goes, your hip goes. So there's one connection. See if you can land in this Ardha Hanuman. Drinking it in, plugging it into the hip socket, and then walking your hands back, landing inside that left leg, moving shin or the flesh of your calf out of the way, into your way into a deeper version, or not. So deeper is not necessarily effective. You can land softly, let your body take the time. Softening all the way to the floor. I'm laughing because my dog is attacking Nicole. You might not see. Okay, again, breathe into the heaviness of the hara, of this hip space filled with source energy. That comes all the way up to your belly button and connects into the outer wings of the hips, down to the pelvic floor. Let that be spacious heaviness. Drawing it down through the legs into the earth. And softly unwind, coming first onto the lower arms, then onto the hands, and then back into Ardha Hanuman, back into low lunge. Very good. And from here you're free to spill. Big motions, usually big or not. Maybe it's just a child's pose that you want. It's amazing to do yoga with your dog, but it's not a very deeply somatic practice usually. Good. Very well done. Walk your hands to the front foot. And we'll just step both feet back into downward dog. And we'll tip those heels, or actually the hip first, and let the heels follow if they do, to the right side. Finding a little arch even in your lower back. And a bend in your knees. So heavy hips, almost like they want to drop to the floor. And the other side, left side. Bending the knees, long back, heavy hips. Good. And inhale, come back up. Exhale, landing on the knees. Taking a moment to embrace that lower level towards the earth more. Good. Building the arrival moment of body through limbs to earth. And you can lengthen your right leg out the back. Exhale, bring it in towards the right elbow and thread it around the left. We've done this before, I'm sure. Without the right leg, right foot touching the floor. Good. Inhale, release it and send it out the back. Elongation through the entire length of leg, hip, into the spine. Exhale, same again, right knee in, thread it around the left leg. Very good. And release. Last one. Exhale, come, bring it in. Hug it around. Good. And release. And this time we'll bring the knee in, but we'll flip the lower leg across for landing in pigeon pose. Good. Nesting back into a heaviness. You might need a support underneath the right hip. So you can bring a folded blanket, a block. Good. Very nice. See if you can release the hands for a moment, let them float. Maybe they come over your head, maybe they come to your heart. Without collapsing the lower back. So see if there is a pull from the legs towards each other, from the hips into the center. And then you can release and walk yourself forward, lower arms or hands. Very good. Dropping it all. It's like the gravity just draws you in, sucks you in into a motherly embrace. Start to spill, trickle out of this. Moving into something freeing and expansive maybe, or small and relaxing. Whatever your legs, your hips ask for. Very good. Then coming to meet me in all fours again. Take your time to get there, to find that even weight distribution. Right hip half down to right foot, left hip half down to the left. Left leg gets long out the back. Reach it out. See that it reaches from the hip into the left big toe. Exhale, knee into left elbow, thread it across. Float it, float it, float it. Good. And unwind, untie. Let it get long. Good. Exhale. Thread it in and across. And untie. Okay. Last one. Thread it in. Unwind. And this time left knee comes in and flip the lower leg. Good. Landing for pigeon. Exactly. Bring your support. Let that be a moment of arrival. We're making hip to earth connection again. So we're bringing everything back down to the source. Very good. Release the hands over the head or to your heart. Without that lower back taking any pinching. So see that the pull can be here, and that will give you a lift and a release in the lower back. Plugging both thigh bones back into the hip might make you float a little,
And then you can trickle spill out of this into a fold. Lower arms forward, or just on the hands, or maybe your whole body melts to the floor. Coming into relaxation, but keeping a connection, like a buzzing. It's almost a buzzing bone pathway from the hips down, down, down through the legs. It's almost like for the first time you notice how much they are intertwined. And then you can trickle back out of this, let it spill into something that feels freeing and spacious. Last time we go into floating shape, if that's what what it's drawing you in. Good. And then we'll come back onto the knees. Sit your hips onto the knees and let the hands glide past until the fingers point behind you back. And we'll lift the hips up into a heart opener from body opening after all this forward folding. Optional to walk the hands into the heels and come into a full camel. Ustrasana. Optional, you can keep it more low, just lifting the hips, rolling shoulders together, or coming to this deeper shape, hands to heels, toes tucked or not. And then softly bringing those hips back to the heels. Good. Find into a little child's pose. Unwinding the muscles away from the bones. Very good. Then you can inhale, roll the spine softly back on top of the hips. Staying in that heavy presence of hips through to knees into heels. Bringing legs forward. Good. We'll come into one last seated pose, a little twist. Let the left leg be long and draw the right knee in, bringing your left hand outside the right foot. Right hand behind you. Good. And then we'll just lengthen that right leg forward. Twisting body so you can look over your right shoulder. Maybe there stays a bend in your right knee, maybe it gets long. Good. Maybe you can float your right arm back to twist yourself, floating. But now the hip floor meeting is what grounds you. Baba. Very good. And softly landing left heel. Find a forward fold for a moment. Bringing belly towards your thighs.
Inhale to roll up. Good. Second side. Bend the left knee. Right hand outside the left foot. Twist. And then let the left foot float, let it get long. It's like a leaning into the belly of your hamstring. In the depth of that muscle. And maybe floating left arm backwards. Hara at the base. From where on out, all these twists, all these movements become soft and nourishing rather than a flinging of limbs. Untie, unroll. If the forward fold draws you back in, come back in. Otherwise, you can start to roll your spine to the floor. Softly. From that heaviness of the hips, keep that going. Good. Very nice. Baba. Let your your legs be windshield wipers, just rolling side to side. Then you can bring, for an inversion, you can bring your legs up. Option for happy baby. Or for a receiving back, legs and arms free. Yogi's choice. Or a deeper inversion in terms of shoulder stand, halasana, plow pose. Anything that is a yogi pose or not. But something that brings you into the very depth of that pathway, of the inner groundedness of your hips to the earth through your legs and feet. Alive and juicy, but so soft and earthing. Good. And once you're ready, you can release limbs, release tail and head, arms and legs into final rest, into a shavasana on your back, or if you prefer, you can shavasana on your side. For some people, that's just more comfortable. If you're on your side, see if you can relax the belly fully. It's that one pose that allows us to soften and allows us physically, but even more so mentally, psychologically, to fully let go of the belly. Just resting in that deep grumbling of your hips, that primordial hum of the hara. if you can and want to stay longer in Shavasana, please do. It's very short in these 1 hour online classes. If not, start deepening your breath. Maybe there's a sound to your exhale from the mouth. Bring hands to the body, connecting. Slowly letting some light back into your eyes, taking in, orientating yourself back into space. Knees into the heart, or a long stretch. And in a soft way, maybe over your side, find back to a seat. Nesting back into that arrival in your seat bones. Close your eyes once more and see if that inhale can just bring you a bit more into a leaning back and a heaviness in the seat. Good. Hands to heart, speak your grace and gratitude for these teachings we got to share. Hands to the forehead. Om Aim Reem Shreem Dum Durgaye Namaha. In honor of Durga in times of Navaratri, the 9-day festival devoted to Durga. Haryam Tat Sat Chema. Thank you.